All right, friends, welcome back. So we are still at the very beginning parts of Unit 2, humans versus bacteria. Again, Sir Sterling's favorite unit of the entire bunch of units that we will be exploring throughout the school year. And this 5E sequence is entitled The Black Death, which we should be familiar with. And if we're not, we're going to get familiar right now. So, lesson one, our engage, our opening. Let's read our aim. Why was the disease that caused the Black Death so deadly? So, our do now says COVID-19, caused by the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, is a highly contagious virus that emerged in late 2019 and quickly led to a global pandemic affecting millions of lives worldwide. Why do you think some people became seriously ill from COVID-19 while others showed little to no symptoms? Right? So, me personally, I've had COVID-19 multiple times. I've actually had it twice that I've tested positive for it twice. Even though the second time that I got it, I was vaccinated against it, right? But luckily, I'm still here, right? It didn't necessarily have a huge impact on me. The first time, I just lost my sense of smell, lost my sense of taste, and I had a terrible head cold. But I wasn't hospitalized. Luckily, I didn't have any respiratory issues, which is a very common symptom of COVID-19 infection. And I was able to make it through. Now, that occurred when it's 2020, so I was 28 when that occurred, okay? And then I got it a second time in 2022, which I was 30, almost 31, all right? And then that one was, again, lack of taste, lack of smell. The head cold wasn't like terrible, but I didn't have any respiratory issues breathing or anything. So the question is really just asking you, why did some people seem to become so ill getting it, while some people seem to not have other illnesses, right? So just take a pause here, take the 3 minutes, and just jot down two bullets, two reasons why you think some people got very ill and some people did not get very ill. And then unpause and see what it is. So pause the video right now, and then we'll come back together. All right, now that you've unpaused, some of the reasons why I say, and see if maybe it matches up with yours and maybe something that you might be interested in writing down if you don't have it. Some people naturally, right, or biologically had stronger immune systems than others, right? That's just by chance. Some people are just naturally stronger immune-wise or health-wise than other people are. Some people are just more prone to diseases. It's just by chance, really. Some people may have poorer diets. And by poorer diets, I mean they might lack certain nutrients that aid or boosts immunity, right? Obviously, a proper diet is always great for our cells so that way they can metabolize and perform what they need to perform. But what if we're not getting the nutrients that we need from the type of foods that we're eating or the type of foods that are available to us? If we're lacking certain vitamins and certain minerals that we need to help fight off these infections, we might be more prone to having worse symptoms as a result of having a poorer diet. Okay. And then anything else that you guys like maybe said as well can also be written here as well. And what Sir Sterling says is not law. These are just some of my thoughts, and I don't want you to erase any of your thoughts at all. Your thoughts are just as valid, and I want you to write them down and keep them. If you want to add on, please feel free to add on, okay? All right, part A. What was the Black Death? It doesn't even sound like something fun. The Black Death sounds very, very scary. But let's see how scary it was. So, the Black Death was a terrifying pandemic that struck Europe in the 14th century and got its name from the horrible symptoms that turned victims' bodies into grim reminders of death. So, it literally was called the Black Death because they looked dead. Originating in Central Asia, right? We should know geographically that Asia and Europe are interconnected, right? Some people even call that landmass Eurasia because both of them don't really fit 100% of what it means to be a continent. But let's continue. Originating in Central Asia, the disease spread west along trade routes, reaching Europe in 1347 and devastating the continent until 1351. So 1347, 1348, 1349, 1350, and 1351, that's 5 years that it devastated the continent. 5 years that we're talking about. Let's continue. This deadly pandemic killed an estimated 25 to 30 million people. Guys, in 5 years, it killed 25 to 30 million people. That's 1/3 of all of Europe's population wiped out in 5 years. All right? That's huge. That's averaging anywhere from 5 to 6 million people a year that literally died from this. All right? Now, this was caused by the bacterium Y. pestis. All right? You don't have to pronounce Yersinia, but we can call it Y. pestis. And it was mainly spread by fleas that lived on rats, which thrived in crowded and unsanitary conditions in medieval cities, right? So this is being carried around by a flea. And those fleas that infect rats, rats we know love to rummage through garbage and anything that's filthy. We know this in New York City. We see subway rats, right? Why do we see subway rats? Because there's often a lot of different things that rats can thrive on. Remember, rats are omnivores. They can pretty much eat and survive anywhere, right? So if somebody throws a Snickers bar on the train tracks, you're gonna see rats there because there's food there, right? So anywhere where there's unsanitary conditions, you're gonna start to see vermin such as rats. And we know that rats are infamously known for carrying around diseases, right? And these people that live in these unsanitary conditions, they're exposed to these fleas and to these rats that probably interacted with them, brushed across their foot, or bit them by accident, or bit them on purpose. You know, these rats are a little crazy these days. Let's continue though. All right. We're starting to see now that even though the Black Death is caused by a different bacteria than cholera, we're starting to see the parallel that is spread, right, through crowded and unsanitary conditions. So it would seem as though this is a recurring theme that's coming up. We know cholera spread in New York City from overcrowding, right? And we know New York City is very highly populated. We also know that New York City is not the most sanitary place, right? And people that live in these unsanitary conditions that were unable to flee, they were much more likely to get cholera. In this case, for the Black Death, it seems as though they're much more likely, that's crowded and unsanitary conditions, people, they're much more likely to get sick as well. All right, so that seems to be a pattern that's occurring. All right, let's continue. Victims experience a shocking range of symptoms that came on quickly. It often started with a sudden high fever, chills, and severe headaches. As the infection worsened, many felt extreme fatigue and weakness. So they were weak, they were so fatigued, they really couldn't do much of anything. And if you actually look here, you can literally see that they're like just lying down in bed, all crumped together, right? And it made it hard to move. The most notorious signs were the buboes, which are painful, swollen lymph nodes that typically appeared on the groin, armpit, your groin is, in between your legs, right? Your armpits or your neck. These buboes, sometimes large as eggs. Ooh, ooh, sometimes as large as eggs, would often turn black as the tissue died, a grim indicator of the disease severity. So it literally just turned black, right? So they were literally just dying slowly, guys. Some patients also develop dark spots on their skins, adding to the plague's ominous reputation. As death spread rapidly, streets became filled with bodies, and the air was heavy with cries of despair. So all you literally saw was dead bodies everywhere and people just crying out for help, for any type of relief from the symptoms. Many people turned to religion for comfort, believing that the plague was a punishment from God, while others, frightened and confused, sought to blame marginalized groups. Oh, we're mentioning marginalized groups again. Remember when we talked about that with the unit opening with cholera? We said the Irish Catholics and the African Americans were among the ones that seemed to be most affected by cholera. Now we're seeing, oh, some people are saying, like, oh, those that were like the ostracized ones of society, they're the ones to blame. They're the ones that are spreading it. Now, is that true? Probably not. But this is the way that people thought during this time. And people also thought like the plague was a punishment from God. Like this was just my fate, right? I must have done something to make God upset, and now he's punishing me with this disease, right? But believing that it was a punishment from God might not be the best idea because then it might prevent you from seeking treatment, right? If you feel like you're just doomed, then you really are just doomed. You're less likely to seek treatment for any of this or believe that there's any treatment for it. So you're much more likely to pass away from this. This dark chapter not only took countless lives, but also changed how people viewed health and death, leaving a lasting impact in history. All right, so we have a 5 W's graphic organizer. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. So who? Who did the Black Death affect? Well, according to the reading, it affected some Asians, right? Because it originated in Asia, but mostly Europeans. Zoom in. Mostly Europeans, right? With an emphasis on those, right? We saw a higher rate of those living in crowded slash unsanitary areas. Okay? Now, what? What was the Black Death? What were some of its symptoms? So, the Black Death, right? They experienced fever, chills, severe headaches, right? Fatigue and weakness, muscle weakness and fatigue. But most infamously, you remember, they showed buboes, right? They had those buboes, large, painful, swollen boils. But all of this is caused by the bacteria Y. pestis, right? I'm abbreviating the Y pestis, right? So this is all caused by a bacteria, just like cholera is caused by a bacteria. Now, where did the Black Death take place? Some of Asia, most of Europe. Okay. When did the Black Death take place? Well, it said 1347 to about 1351. So that's approximately 5 years. Why and how, right? So why or how was the cause of the Black Death? How did the Black Death spread, right? So we know that it spread by fleas infected rats and rats infected people, right? And we know that rats thrive in unsanitary conditions. And again, the fleas are infected by Y. pestis, which is a bacteria. So the fleas are carrying that bacteria, right? They're living on the rats, infecting the rats, and the rats are infecting the people, right? Do you see that there seems to be like some type of pattern that's occurring. The bacteria infects the fleas infect the rats, and the rats infect the people, and the people can infect people. This is how bacteria spreads. They use multiple mechanisms. They're very cunning, they're very smart, even though they're so simple. This is why Sir Sterling's obsessed with bacteria, right? Because it's so interesting how they're able to survive and reproduce in almost any environment that they're exposed to. So I know that that was a pretty short engage, but we're going to continue with the Black Death with an investigation on disease transmission. It's going to be a really fun simulation. And we're going to see who got a certain disease and why they got a certain disease. You guys are absolutely amazing. Make sure that you're here for your Explore, which is disease transmission, and I'll see you next time. Bye.